You finally bought the house you've always wanted. 4 bedrooms, 2-car garage, a beautiful kitchen, a quiet neighborhood, a backyard where your children can play, maybe even a small office where you can finally close the door at the end of the workday. You stand in the driveway, look at the house, and think, I finally made it. For years you worked for this moment. You saved, you sacrificed, you waited, you watched other people buy homes while you continued renting. And now, the keys are in your hand. The house is yours. Everything should feel better. But 6 months later, you're sitting at your kitchen table staring at your bank account. And you have one question. Where did all my money go? Because the mortgage wasn't the only thing you bought. You bought the property taxes, the insurance, the repairs, the maintenance, the furniture, the higher utility bills, the bigger lifestyle. And eventually, you realized something nobody told you when you were standing in that driveway. You didn't just buy a house. You bought a monthly obligation that could follow you for decades. Meet David. He's 38 years old. He's married. He has 2 children. And for most of his adult life, David rented. He didn't hate renting. But every time the rent increased, he felt like he was throwing money away. His friends owned homes. His coworkers owned homes. His parents constantly told him, you need to buy before prices go even higher. So David started looking. At first, he searched for modest homes. Something comfortable, something affordable, something that wouldn't interfere too much with his other financial goals. Then he saw it. A beautiful 4-bedroom house in a neighborhood he loved. The kitchen had new countertops. The backyard was enormous. There was a 2-car garage. The schools were good. The house had everything his family wanted. There was only one problem. It cost considerably more than the house David originally planned to buy. But the mortgage calculator said the payment was technically manageable. The bank approved the loan. And suddenly the question changed. It wasn't, can we comfortably afford this house? It became, why shouldn't we buy it? David convinced himself that his income would increase. He expected promotions. He expected bonuses. He expected his career to continue improving. And besides, everyone told him that real estate was a good investment. So he signed the papers. And that weekend, David moved into his dream house. For the first few months, everything felt perfect. His children loved their new bedrooms. His wife loved the kitchen. His friends came over for dinner. David parked his car inside the garage for the first time. He walked through the house at night and felt proud. He had spent years imagining this moment. Now it was real. And every time someone asked, how's the new house? David smiled and said, it's amazing. And it was. At least for a while. Then the first property tax bill arrived. David knew property taxes existed. Of course he did. But knowing something exists and actually paying it are 2 completely different experiences. Then came homeowners insurance. Then higher electricity bills. The house was larger. There were more rooms, more lights, more appliances, more space to heat and cool. Then came lawn maintenance. The yard that looked beautiful in the real estate photos suddenly needed constant attention. Then something happened in the kitchen. A pipe started leaking. It wasn't catastrophic, but it wasn't cheap either. David paid the repair bill and thought, okay, that's just part of owning a home. And he was right, it was. But that was only the beginning. A few months later, the air conditioning system started acting strangely. Then one of the appliances stopped working. Then there was a plumbing issue. Then the roof needed attention. None of these expenses destroyed David financially. That's important. The problem wasn't one giant bill. The problem was that the bills never seemed to stop. And that is one of the biggest differences between renting and owning. When you rent, many major maintenance costs belong to someone else. When you own, you are the someone else. The roof is yours. The furnace is yours. The plumbing is yours. The driveway is yours. The appliances are yours. The broken fence, yours. The tree that needs trimming, yours. The basement that suddenly develops a water problem, definitely yours. David began to realize that owning a house wasn't just a monthly mortgage payment. It was a permanent financial responsibility. Then came another problem. The house was beautiful, but beautiful houses have a way of making everything around them look outdated. David's old furniture suddenly looked wrong in the new living room. The dining table was too small. The television looked tiny against the larger wall. The backyard needed patio furniture. The kitchen had everything they needed. But there was one thing David's wife wanted to change. The cabinets. They weren't bad. They just weren't perfect. Then came the conversation. Since we're already here, maybe we should update the kitchen. It started with the kitchen, then the bathroom, then the backyard, then the garage. Nothing was outrageous, but every improvement made the house more expensive. And more importantly, every improvement made the current lifestyle feel more necessary. This is where something subtle happens. David's house didn't just increase his expenses, it increased his expenses. It increased his expectations. Before buying the house, a simple weekend was enough. After buying the house, he wanted the backyard to look good. The living room needed to look good. The kitchen needed to look good. The garage needed to be organized. The house needed furniture. The furniture needed upgrades. And suddenly, maintaining the house became part of maintaining an image. David wasn't trying to impress strangers. He wasn't trying to become wealthy looking. He simply wanted his home to feel like the home he had dreamed about. And that's understandable. But there's a hidden cost to turning your home into a lifestyle. The more you upgrade, the more expensive your normal becomes. Then David looked at his investments. Before buying the house, he had been putting roughly $2,000 a month into retirement and investment accounts. It wasn't easy, but he had a system. Every month, the money went into his accounts automatically. He didn't think about it. He was building his future after buying the house. That number dropped. First to $1,200, then $800, then some months almost nothing. There was always another expense. A repair, a home improvement, a family expense, a higher utility bill, something. David still had a retirement account. He still had savings. He still had a good income, but the speed at which he was building wealth had changed dramatically. And that was the moment he finally understood the real cost of the house. It wasn't just the mortgage. It was what the mortgage prevented him from doing with the rest of his money. This is something many people miss when they calculate whether they can afford a house. They look at the monthly payment. Maybe the mortgage is $3,000, and they think, I can handle $3,000. But what about everything around it? Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities, repairs, furniture, landscaping, appliances, renovations, and the unexpected expenses that never appear on the mortgage calculator. A house can be affordable on paper and still be expensive for your life, because affordability isn't simply about whether you can make the payment. It's about whether you can make the payment and still have enough money left for everything else that matters. Your emergency fund, your investments, your children's needs, your future, your ability to change jobs, your ability to handle a bad year. That's the part David hadn't considered deeply enough. And then came the recession scare. The market dropped. David opened his investment account and saw that it was down. Normally, he would have ignored it. He understood that markets move. But now he had a large mortgage, a large house, 2 children, and less cash flow. The market decline suddenly felt different. He wasn't just thinking, should I stay invested? He was thinking, what if I lose my job? What if the market stays down? What if the house needs another major repair? What if something happens to our income? The house hadn't technically become a financial disaster, but it had reduced David's margin for error. And that may be the most important lesson of all. A financially strong life isn't simply about owning valuable things. It's about having margin. Margin is what allows you to survive a bad month. It's what allows you to handle a $5,000 emergency without using a credit card. It's what allows you to change jobs without panicking. It's what allows you to keep investing when the market falls. It's what allows you to say no. And sometimes, buying too much house destroys that margin. You can have a beautiful home and a fragile financial life at the same time. That's the paradox. From the outside, David looked wealthier than ever, but financially, he had less flexibility than before. Now, this doesn't mean buying a house is a mistake. Far from it. For many people, owning a home can be an excellent financial decision. A home can provide stability. It can build equity. It can protect against rising rents. It can become an important part of long-term wealth. The problem isn't owning a home. The problem is confusing the biggest house you can qualify for with the best house you can afford. Those are completely different things. A bank is primarily interested in whether you can make the payments. You should be interested in whether you can build the life you actually want while making those payments. The bank doesn't care how much you're investing. The bank doesn't care whether you have enough emergency savings. The bank doesn't care if you want to retire early. The bank doesn't care whether you want to travel. The bank doesn't care if you want to help your children. The bank's question is simple. Can you make the payment? Your question should be much bigger. Can I own this house without sacrificing the rest of my financial life? Eventually, David made a difficult decision. He stopped trying to make the house perfect. He stopped renovating everything. He stopped upgrading things simply because he could. He built an emergency fund again. He restarted automatic investing. He created a separate account for home maintenance. And most importantly, he changed the way he thought about his house. It didn't need to impress anyone. It didn't need to look like a magazine. It didn't need to be the nicest house on the street. It just needed to be a good place for his family to live. That change saved him money. But it also gave him something more valuable: peace of mind. And this is where the story becomes relevant to almost anyone between 35 and 40, because this is often the age when people make some of their biggest financial decisions: marriage, children, career changes, buying a house, buying a second car, moving to a better neighborhood, saving for college, investing for retirement. And because income often increases during these years, it's easy to believe that every increase in income should lead to an increase in lifestyle. You make $80,000, then $100,000, then $130,000, and eventually the house that once seemed impossible suddenly seems reasonable. But here's the question you should ask before upgrading your home. What happens if my income stops growing? Not next month, not necessarily next year. But what if your salary stays exactly where it is for the next 5 years? Can you still afford the house comfortably? Can you keep investing? Can you handle repairs? Can you survive an emergency? Can you continue living without relying on debt? If the answer is yes, you may have found the right house. If the answer is no, you may have bought too much house. There's another question that is even more important. Ask yourself, what am I giving up to own this house? Maybe the answer is nothing. That's great. But maybe the answer is 5 years of slower investing, fewer vacations, less flexibility, more stress, working longer, delaying retirement, or depending on 2 incomes just to maintain the lifestyle. Suddenly the house looks different, because every financial decision has an opportunity cost. Money spent on the house cannot simultaneously be invested somewhere else. A dollar sent toward a mortgage isn't available for your retirement account. A dollar spent on renovations isn't available for an emergency fund. A dollar spent upgrading your lifestyle isn't available to buy freedom later. That doesn't make those expenses wrong. It simply means they have a price beyond the number on the receipt. David eventually realized something. He had spent years believing that buying the dream house would be the reward for becoming financially successful. But financial success wasn't supposed to mean owning the biggest house possible. It was supposed to mean having choices. The choice to take a better job. The choice to leave a bad job. The choice to help your family. The choice to invest. The choice to take a vacation without worrying about the credit card bill. The choice to handle a major repair without panic. The choice to eventually retire when you want to. That is real financial freedom. And sometimes, a smaller house can give you more of it. So before you buy your dream house, don't just ask, can I afford the mortgage? Ask, can I afford the life that comes with this house? Because the house is only the beginning. The mortgage is just one payment. The real cost is everything the house pulls behind it. The taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, the repairs, the furniture, the upgrades, the lifestyle, and most importantly, the opportunity cost. You might buy a beautiful house today and accidentally delay the financial freedom you wanted tomorrow. Or you might choose a house that's slightly smaller, slightly less impressive, slightly less expensive, and discover that the extra money gives you something far more valuable: margin. Because someday you may look back at the house you bought in your late 30s. You may remember the excitement, the keys, the first night, The empty rooms, the feeling that you had finally made it, and hopefully, you'll also remember that the goal was never simply to own the house. The goal was to build a life you could comfortably afford inside it. A house should be a place where your life happens. It shouldn't become the thing your entire financial life revolves around. So if you're standing in front of your dream house right now, before you sign the papers, before you choose the bigger model, before you convince yourself that your future income will take care of today's decision, stop for a moment, look at the house, then look beyond the house. Look at your investments, your savings, your monthly expenses, your savings, your future, your freedom. And ask yourself one final question. Do I want to own this house? Or do I want this house to own me? Because the dream isn't really the house. The dream is having a home without sacrificing your future to keep it.